This is Strange New Trek, a podcast about the life and times of Captain Christopher Pike. And now your hosts. Aspera, an old Latin term meaning rough, difficult, harsh, and even unrefined. This week, number one finds herself on trial for hiding her ancestry and genetic alterations. In an attempted show of solidarity, I have given us a trial as well. My notes this week have been written by the ship's computer running a ChatGPT simulator, with the instructions to recap the episode in a funny way using Star Trek references. I have not read this before, and neither is my co-host. Joining me this week is my number one, Commander Dog, and our Transporter Chief, Henry Janeway. What's happening, Henry?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm a little bit in anticipation of what our dear computer has in store for us this evening.
Yes, me too. I've held off on reading it. I've held off on reading it because I want to be, if there's anything in here that's interesting, I want to be shocked by it as well. So I literally, what I told it to do was recap the show in a humorous way that uses lots of Star Trek references. So we're going to find out if ChatGPT is funny and if it knows Star Trek.
Well, this should be interesting. Did you do it just the single shot, or did you have to kind of feed it a couple of different times to get it to do it right?
You know what I did was I broke the notes from Memory Alpha into sections.
Right.
And put it through that way. That way it doesn't lose the thread, you know. So,
right.
So we may have
doesn't go off writing its own episode real quick.
Exactly. So we may have to correct the story as we go. I'm hoping that's not the case, but we'll know here pretty quickly. I hope this is as good an idea as I thought it was, you know.
Yeah, we'll find out. I'm sure it's going to be great either way.
It should be entertaining, yeah. This week we were discussing the episode Astra Per Aspera, which means either to the stars through difficulty or through difficulty to the stars, which is also the Kansas state motto, because Kansas is known for their space program.
Learn something new every day.
I made that part up. I don't think it's actually true.
See, you could have bought and sold me with that one.
Yeah.
For all I know about Kansas.
Well, the only thing I know about Kansas is that's where Clark Kent was raised, and that's literally the end of it right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's get started here. Una's ill-timed trip down memory lane took her to an incident from her childhood when her parents feared that her Illyrian genetics might spill the beans if they dared to set foot in a hospital. Fast forward to the present, where she found herself in a delightful tete-a-tete with Captain Marie Battelle. Battelle, in her infinite wisdom, offered Una a deal sweeter than Klingon blood wine at a Ferengi discount sale. Plead guilty. Plead guilty and earn yourself a dishonorable discharge, no jail time. Una, quick on the uptake, deemed it a stellar deal, and even her defender from Judge Advocate General's office gave it a Vulcan-style logical nod of approval. Una, however, decided to put it... Oh my god, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. Una, however, decided to put this conversation on pause for a moment. Battelle graciously excused herself, allowing Una to have a tete-a-tete of a different kind with her counsel. Una, being the curious mind that she is, couldn't help but inquire how one can receive proper counsel when her defender moonlights as Battelle's personal legal stand-up comedian.
I mean, that's close enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's, it hasn't lost track of what it's doing so far, so this is interesting.
No, it's pretty on the mark. As far as my experience with ChatGPT, it's going pretty good.
It's not doing too bad. Meanwhile, Captain Pike embarked on an interstellar odyssey to a planet in the Volterra Nebula, a place less hospitable to humans than a Klingon family reunion. The atmosphere was so inhospitable that even Klingons would be jealous of a human's respiratory challenges there. Pike found himself sporting a dashing breathing mask, which incidentally made him look like a space-age Bane. Now, see, I thought it looked like my CPAP machine, so...
I could see Bane in there.
Yeah, I mean...
I used to go around doing a Bane impression every Halloween over when I was in high school, so respect the game, you know?
Oh, yeah. It's, yeah, I mean, I could see it now that I was going to say now that somebody said it, but, you know, still no person has said it. Apparently, ChatGPT just decided that's the case. Okay. Seated in Counselor Nira Catul's office, Pike's predicament wasn't as silent as a Vulcan meditation session. His oxygen supply, much like a tribble on a caffeine binge, plummeted to a mere 2%. Accompanied by an alarm. I don't know, man. Accompanied by an alarm beeping that would make a red alert seem like a lullaby. The secretary, with a flair for understatement, surmised that Pike might not have the patience of a Vulcan during a logic debate. Okay. So it's reaching a little bit here, but it's trying.
It's really trying to take a dig at the Vulcans there.
It really is, yeah. Pike, undaunted by the lack of oxygen, quipped, "Try me," as his life support ran out faster than a Ferengi chasing a Latinum bar down a gravity well. See, that one works. That one works.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a zinger.
Yeah. The secretary, in a heroic scramble to save the day, rushed to ensure Pike could breathe easy again. After all, even in space, the customer is always right. Catul, realizing she had an oxygen-deprived captain on her hands, adjusted the office's atmosphere and got down to business. Pike, perceptive as ever, knew that Catul and her people were Illyrians, a fact that wasn't exactly a well-kept secret. It turned out Catul had a bone to pick with the Federation's policies, probably bigger than a Gorn's appetite. Pike, channeling his inner Captain Kirk, admitted that Starfleet, and himself included, had been as wrong as a Ferengi haggling with a Vulcan about the price of a tribble. Oh, Chat GPT, you're turning out to be a one-trick pony here. You only got so many references. Yeah. Really, he then spun a yarn about it.
Dig into the barrel.
Yeah, it's really kind of hitting the same notes over and over again. He then spun a yarn about a mission to an allegedly abandoned Illyrian colony on Hediment 9, which turned out to be less abandoned than a holodeck at the height of the red alert.
I don't. I feel like maybe I'm not getting that one, or maybe it just kind of smashed some words together.
Yeah.
Is it saying that the holodeck is completely empty at the height of a red alert?
That's what I think.
Or is it saying
that
the holodeck is so full of people that it's less abandoned?
I think it's trying to say during a red alert there's nobody in the holodeck. I think.
Watch that one episode where Geordi was trying to figure out the engineering problems of the Enterprise when it was trapped by the ancient ship in the asteroid field. Name escapes me again.
Is that the fake Leah Brahms episode?
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, that is so uncomfortable. That is so uncomfortable. Oh, you know, I'm not a big fan of Geordi episodes.
That one and the second one, too.
Oh, the second one's like horrible. The second one is just like...
Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm kind of like...
That's one of those ones that I got to watch it in doses.
I kind of, as I'm watching that one, and I've only seen it a few times in the last 20 years, I'm sure, but every time I'm just like, how dare you try to excuse that away, Geordi? You need to admit you were wrong and just get on with your life.
Yeah, dude, don't try and sink on a ship, bro. Just own it and go.
Yep, because that was kind of gross, man. Oh, man. As Catul gently ushered Pike out of her office, he decided to try a different approach. He, in a moment of legal genius, inquired about her impressive track record. 10 cases against the Federation over 2 years, all overturned or dismissed for lack of evidence. It seemed like Catul had the Federation's legal playbook under her pillow. Huh?
I don't...
That one didn't.
I mean,
work.
I guess you put the Federation in there. I guess that kind of counts.
I mean, they got a reference in there, right? I mean, if that's all it's shooting for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Ballpark.
Pike, having done more research than a Vulcan with an affinity for databases, do you even believe that her cases were as solid as a Klingon bat'leth? He made an impassioned plea for her to take Una's case, stating that if she won, her name would be known across half the quadrant. It would be a legal triumph that even the Borg would admire. I kind of want to ding them for continuity issues, you know?
Oh, man, they're just referencing that one Voyager episode where the Borg assimilated all of Matlock.
Oh, well, maybe it's a better reference than I realized. Cthulhu, ever the cautious counselor, questioned whether Pike was attempting a subtle Vulcan mind meld of bribery. Pike, with all the charm of a hollow novel protagonist, reassured her that he was merely trying to convince her and save an old friend. He handed over a case file, suggesting that it would likely be as challenging as a Vulcan's attempt at stand-up comedy. What? No.
I don't...
He tells her she won't even break a sweat.
He's just getting out there.
Yeah, because he tells her she won't break a sweat. And Vulcans wouldn't be good at stand-up comedy. Cthulhu decided to grace Una with a visit in her cell, as if to say, I told you so, and a slightly more diplomatic, except that she actually tells her, I told you. No, she doesn't. She says, I'm surprised you didn't say, I told you so, huh?
Something akin to that.
Yeah. Una, understandably miffed that her long-lost friend's first words in 25 years were essentially, I told you so, expressed her determination not to play hide-and-seek with her true identity anymore. She was ready to stand up for herself and her people. Cthulhu, in her no-nonsense Illyrian fashion, suggested that Una's playtime was over and that she should accept her dismissal and head home. But Una, as resolute as a Vulcan with a stubborn computer problem, refused to back down. She believed that it was time for all Illyrians, to stop hiding. Cthulhu eventually made the call to inform opposing counsel that Una had rejected the plea deal. However, her parting words to Una were as revealing as a Romulan's poker face. She clarified she was doing it not just for Una, but for herself and all Illyrians who couldn't or wouldn't conceal their true selves just to join Starfleet. You know, before we move on here, I did notice a tendency in this episode to equate Starfleet and the UFP, like to almost use the terms interchangeably. Because Starfleet, according to this, has basically a refugee policy, when I would think that it would be the United Federation of Planets that would have the policy that allows people to join Starfleet.
I mean, it's a little bit of a reach when you really dig down into it.
Yeah. It sometimes feels like in newer Star Trek, and I mean like J.J. Abrams and after, they confuse what the UFP and Starfleet are.
Right.
Yeah.
The UFP being the government, the United Federation of Planets, and Starfleet being the military exploration arm of that government.
Yeah, and they seem to kind of cross terms at times in a way that I find confusing. Back in the ever-tense corridors of the Starship drama, Batel was as furious as a Klingon with his morning Raktajino when confronted by... Why would his Klingon be furious with her Raktajino? When confronted Without, okay, it's because I was reading too fast there. Okay, well, that explains that then. Okay. Yep, okay.
GPT threw you the curveball.
It did. As furious as a Klingon without his morning Raktajino when confronted by Pike with Una's rejection. She had pulled every string in the Federation, and now it seemed they were as tangled as a Tribble's furball. Pike, ever the advocate for his crew, was...
Why do puns in space? That's as tangled as a Tribble's furball.
Yeah, that's like some space hillbilly talk right there. Pike, ever the advocate for his crew, was as emphatic as a Vulcan stating a logical theorem. He believed that Una's rightful place was on his bridge doing her job, not rotting away in a Federation penal colony. Batel, ever the stickler for the rules, pointed out that they were charged with upholding the law, and Una had boldly gone where the law had no jurisdiction.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, I kind of like that one. As the tension reached warp factor 9, Una and Cthulhu found themselves in Admiral Java's office, awaiting the arrival of the prosecution. The door swooshed open and in walked Batel, accompanied by Vice Admiral Pasalk, looking as stern as a Ferengi during a losing game of Dabo. Folks, it appears we're in for a legal showdown that could rival a Klingon opera complete with high-stakes negotiations and dramatic reveals. Now, this Vulcan Vice Admiral has a very punchable face.
He really does. They really hit the Joffrey Baratheon note when they cast him.
Yeah, they were really shooting for a guy you would not like right from the beginning with him. And one of the things I kind of dislike about Enterprise, and it seems like post-Enterprise Star Trek, is how smug and unlikable the Vulcans are.
Yeah, Enterprise really, in my own personal view, went a little too far with playing with the Vulcans and their portrayal of Vulcans during the 4 seasons of the show. Like, they kind of portrayed them as these, like, it was like a conspiracy theorist, like the Vulcans are behind everything. Ooh.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't match up with anything else in any of the other series. The Vulcans are always, because we've seen when Vulcans get really mad, what really happens. But, people who value peace and neutrality of emotion and logical reasoning, and just a really... not an enlightened people, but a people trying to become enlightened,
Right.
It doesn't match.
It doesn't match Spock and Sarek in my view of things. Like, they seem off. Now, I know Enterprise was also trying to incorporate more of that there were Romulan agents still on Vulcan at the time, and at least I think, if I remember right, that was part of what they were kind of getting at, is that there were like Romulan sympathizers, and then the idea of logic extremists, which was an idea I thought was just terrible, but, nobody ran it by me. But
yeah. If only they would have consulted us, man.
Yeah.
They would have got it right.
Yeah. Or at least write her, All right. Act 1. Una couldn't believe her ears when she heard the prosecution's offer. 20 years of imprisonment for a little white lie on her application. It was a punishment that felt more Klingon than Starfleet, and Una was ready to raise her eyebrow higher than Spock's at this point. However, Counselor Cthulhu calmly reminded her that this draconian sentence was Starfleet's response to Una's rejection of the plea deal. As the trial got underway, the prosecution's first witness was none other than Admiral April. Ooh, you know what I haven't got to mention this season yet, Henry?
Yeah, what's up?
All the whiny, racist fanboy man babies that hate the idea that Admiral April could have been black.
Oh,
I forgot to talk about what a bunch of just like yellow belly scum suckers those guys are. I forgot to mention that. I forgot to mention that this season.
I mean, it might go without saying, but until I listened to last season of Strange New Trek, everybody should go give a listen again. But I didn't actually know that they had Robert April in anything other than the books.
Yep. Yeah, he was in the animated series.
I didn't know that they had a little... Yeah, animated, but still, I didn't know they had any kind of portrayal of him outside of the books.
Yeah. I love how people are suddenly like, clinging to the idea that the animated series is somehow canon to the rest of the show, even though Robert April's race doesn't matter at all. And that was really a throwaway episode. And nobody ever worried about the canonicity of the animated series until this.
It's ridiculous. Sometimes people just pull out anything they can grab. It's like, let me go ahead and criticize a Star Wars holiday special.
Yeah, even though most of everybody was never meant to see that. I still try to remember if I saw that live or not, because like part of me thinks I did, but part of me thought I had a Boba Fett that had a rocket pack that launched the rocket, but those never actually made it out to the public.
Right.
Yeah. So I know my childhood memories aren't worth anything. There's no memories in there. All right, but so they bring in Admiral April, who was Una's sponsor at Starfleet Academy. Una couldn't help but see a glimmer of hope in this unexpected turn of events. However, Cthulhu, ever the legal strategist, was skeptical. She suspected that Vice Admiral Pasalk wouldn't call a friendly witness without some ulterior motive in mind. Una, brimming with enthusiasm, suggested Cthulhu should call her to the stand. She believed that her testimony could showcase an Illyrian excelling in Starfleet, potentially swaying the jury. But Cthulhu, with the wisdom of a seasoned legal mind, countered that the prosecution would likely tear her down, exposing the very vulnerabilities they needed to avoid. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Enterprise, La'an played the role of welcoming committee, escorting Counselor K'Tul to Una's quarters, which would serve as her temporary base of operations for the case. K'Tul promptly requested a copy of the Starfleet Uniform Code of Justice and Una's service record to prepare for her defense. You know, with this new show, if there's a Starfleet Uniform Code and there's a whole book of it, they've worn 1 billion different uniforms in this show. I don't know how you'd keep track of them all in one book.
Yeah, that would be a pretty thick, at least 2 Macy's catalogs.
At least 2 of them, yeah. I mean, just the different jumpsuits and dresses they've shown have been all over the place, you know?
And that's not counting every other show that they've had just this last couple years. And, of course, I guess that's for the future 17 editions of the Starfleet Uniform Code.
Exactly. Okay, and I don't mean to keep saying but ChatGPT may not be losing the thread, but I think I am here. Let's see. La'an, however, had a few legal tricks up her sleeve and offered to assist with the case. She mentioned the precedent of Starfleet v. Wick, which piqued K'Tul's interest. This case involved the dismissal of charges due to illegally obtained evidence, a legal strategy that could potentially be relevant. Intrigued but cautious, K'Tul inquired whether La'an had more knowledge about the case. La'an, ever the enigmatic one, indicated she had more to share but wanted to explore all avenues before revealing her hand. And the good news is now we've mentioned La'an, which means we can use her image in the YouTube picture because our listens on YouTube go way up when she's in the picture.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Nice little fan service moment for you there.
Exactly. In the crew lounge, Captain Pike was deep into reviewing the case notes when he had an unexpected encounter with Captain Battelle. Both officers were actually aware that Pike's name was conspicuously absent from the defense's witness list. Pike, with his signature charm, reminded Battelle that he had known Una longer than anyone on the ship. He recalled their meeting at the academy where he had delivered an inspiring speech, there's a shocker, about a test mission mishap. Una, never one to hold back, had approached him afterward to point out his re-entry blunder. Pike, taking a page from his own advice, had told her that every good captain needed a first officer willing to speak up. Battelle, not one to miss a beat, brought up their shared history and the fact that she had told Una the same thing before transitioning into professional mode. She warned Pike about the potential consequences of testifying. Pike could practically hear her saying, "No inspiring speeches today." She emphasized that his testimony could lead to charges of conspiracy and jeopardize not only his career but the entire crew's well-being. Pike, ever the pragmatist, was left with little choice but to heed her warning and let others do the talking. In another corner of the ship, Ortegas and Dr. Mbinga found themselves having a bit of fun at the expense of a rather tense encounter between Spock and Admiral Pasalk. Ortegas playfully reenacted their conversation as if they were emotionless Vulcans, while Mbinga, who had a taste of Vulcan culture, couldn't help but appreciate the underlying tension. When Spock finally approached them, he offered a faux apology for his outburst, acknowledging that Pasalk had a unique talent for bringing out the worst in him. As Spock departed, Ortegas and Mbinga struggled to maintain their composure and not burst into laughter. I actually really like that scene.
I love everything that they did with Spock this season. And really last season, too. Especially the episodes with him and T'Pring were really good. And I just poking fun, but also kind of keeping the same spirit that Leonard Nimoy brought to the character.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the actress portrayal, but this whole thing where Ortegas was just like, mimicking what she thought the conversation was like, and then Binga's like, you don't see the body language that I do. They hate each other. I thought that was really kind of an interesting and fun little way to play on Vulcans in public,
Yeah, I wish they would have done a little bit more between those two with this episode, though. I think there could have been a couple more interesting conversations that we hear instead of just seeing from afar.
Yeah, we could, and maybe they still will. Maybe they'll keep that guy around as an admiral in the future,
Oh, yeah. As a bad guy, he was great. I'd love to see him again.
Yeah. On the bridge, La'an sought the assistance of Uhura on a rather unconventional mission. She asked for any communications related to Una from the past 6 months, including all ship-wide personal logs. Uhura, well-versed in Starfleet regulations, was quick to point out that personal logs were sealed unless expressly ordered to be opened by Starfleet Command. La'an tried to assert her authority, but Uhura stood firm, recognizing that following an illegal order could spell trouble for both of them. She made it clear that it wasn't what Una would want. Uhura, I'd rather not find myself in a Klingon prison, thank you. Let's stick to the prime directive of following the rules. Okay, that's not an actual quote. ChatGPT came up with that one.
So, you go to Klingon prison for breaking the prime directive, and the prime directive is now rules.
Yes, yeah.
Someone should remind now Lieutenant Jim Kirk about that one real quick.
Yeah. Oh, boy. All right, Act 2. The scene was set on the USS Enterprise, where Admiral Javis, flanked by the esteemed Tellarite Space Command representative Zeus Talagol, and the Vulcan Starfleet commander Chiv, took the reins of the tribunal. With precision worthy of a Vulcan, Javis turned to Una and inquired if she consented to Captain Batel's appointment as the prosecuting officer. Una, with an air of resignation, gave her consent. The charges were then read aloud, formally accusing Una of violating Starfleet's code regarding permanent DNA modification, submitting falsified information to Starfleet, and 2 counts of sedition. Una, summoning her inner Vulcan, pleaded not guilty. Now,
I have to point out real quick that ChatGPT did get it wrong. It was not on the Enterprise. It was on Earth.
The scene was set on the... Oh, yeah. See, okay, you're right. I wasn't even paying any attention to that part. Yeah, they are trying to say it's still on the Enterprise, and it is not. Okay, well, that's one major negative right there. Of course, what I find interesting here is they say Una, summoning her inner Vulcan, pleaded not guilty. Well, Vulcans became unfeeling after that trait was taken away from Una in the original pilot and given to Spock, who was originally supposed to be very emotional. So Una is supposed to be super cool and, non-reactive and all that was her original character trait.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's a nice connection.
Captain Batel, with the poise of a seasoned diplomat, opened the case by invoking the specter of the eugenics wars on Earth, a dark chapter in human history that had resulted in the deaths of millions. She argued that genetic engineering was tantamount to playing God and posed a threat to the very essence of natural evolution. In response, Counselor Cthulhu, with the precision of a Vulcan logician, rose to speak in defense. She acknowledged the illegality of genetic engineering under Federation law, but reminded the tribunal that laws, even in the Federation, had been unjust in the past. Slavery, apartheid, religious discrimination, and more. Cthulhu made the compelling case that merely having a law did not guarantee its moral righteousness. She acknowledged the Federation's tragic history with genetic modification, but contended that fear and prejudice had blinded them. Una was on trial because she had been forced to hide something that made others uncomfortable. Cthulhu's impassioned defense, however, appeared to have ruffled Admiral April's feathers. In the cross-examination, Batel probed April about his investment in Una's career, which he conceded. When asked if he would have sponsored Una at the Academy had he known about her genetic modifications, April hesitated, but ultimately admitted he would not have. One thing I'm going to pull from real quick, it doesn't need to be a huge sidebar or anything. If I remember right, when Khan was first in the show, he was the result of selective breeding. And this has turned into... I think
you might be correct on that.
Yeah, and this has turned into genetic modification over the years. Which, I don't know if that was what was originally intended. I think it was supposed to be... when you talk about eugenics, that's kind of like that Nazi breeding program,
Right.
Yeah. And so
maybe it's just interchangeable there over the years.
Yeah, I don't know how realistic the idea of genetic engineering would have been in the 60s, so maybe it was just a new idea that was pumped in, because I know by the time Deep Space Nine and Julian Bashir come around, it's genetic engineering. And I think there was an episode of The Next Gen called the Masterpiece Society that had to do with engineering as well, or cloning at the very least.
Right.
It was a Pulaski
It's definitely
episode.
Had a bit of an evolution there.
Yeah. So I've got questions about Khan as this season unfolds and as Star Trek itself has unfolded over time.
Here's hoping we get a little more Khan.
Well, there's room for it. I don't know how they would do it besides, A very little more con.
Yeah, it'd probably be some kind of time travel thing or something, or most likely something to do with Lon. But,
yeah,
I would be down for young Khan.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Maybe a young, innocent version of him. Speaking of which, I'm really looking forward
a child, maybe.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week's episode for no particular reason. Yeah. Yeah. I actually, when I was getting ready for this week's recording, that episode started, and I'm like, I shouldn't be sitting here watching this. I have other stuff to get ready for. And I'm like, but just 10 more minutes, because I really like the next episode.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have a lot to say next week. I can tell you that one.
Yeah, I really like that one. During the defense's cross-examination, Catul pressed April on why he would have denied Una's application, citing a specific regulation barring genetically modified individuals from serving in Starfleet. April, with the weight of his rank and service behind him, justified the decision by pointing to Regulation 17, Article 12. Catul, ever the tactician, then asked April to define General Order 1, the Prime Directive, and how it prohibited Starfleet from interfering with other cultures. This move raised an objection from the prosecution for relevance, but Tellarite Representative Talagal allowed it, curious himself. April explained the Prime Directive's principles, but Catul skillfully pointed out instances where April had violated it, citing various examples of his interventions in pre-warp civilizations. That's just a danger of being the captain of the Enterprise, I think.
Yeah, it kind of comes with the job that you're going to have to violate one or two major regulations at least in your first week.
Yeah, I have yet to see a captain of the Enterprise that hasn't had some serious, Prime Directive violations.
I thought it was kind of cool, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I very well could be, but I think this is the first time that we have seen a captain grilled on the stand in this frame of context. Like, usually when it comes to, like, say, the court-martial, for example, right? Or Rules of Engagement from Deep Space Nine, when Worf was commanding the Defiant and was accused of firing on a civilian ship. But with those episodes, it kind of frames it as more of a, let's get the captain away from the legal troubles, and we got to find some way to get them off the hook here. But I think this is the first time that we've seen, or maybe not an admiral, but a former captain of the Enterprise, on the stand getting railed pretty much in front of everybody about his decisions behind the chair, and it being portrayed as this is the bad guy, at least for the moment it was. And, just really kind of trying to paint him in that light, at least in the moment, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, he does get a little bit of a redemption at the end of the episode.
Well, I think you're right in the context of what's being done here, because usually the courtroom episodes are somebody's been accused of something either unjust or untrue. And right. in this, everything that everybody's copping to or being asked about or confessing is absolutely what they did. Admiral April, as captain of the Enterprise, violated the Prime Directive. Una lied about her genetic background. So, yeah, I think you're right here. This is like the first time where it's just somebody kind of getting grilled over if that's what you were saying, an actual thing they had done.
Right.
Yeah. However, Battelle objected once more, and this time Admiral Javis sustained the objection, reminding Catul that the witness was not on trial. Catul, relentless in her pursuit of justice, had effectively highlighted the double standards in Starfleet's application of its own rules. Yeah, see, here's your thing again. In another part of the ship, Captain Pike found himself questioning his decision to involve Catul in Una's defense. See, that's kind of weird. So it was his suggestion that Pike is questioning this person that it was really Una wanted in her defense, but he's the one that went and got her. So he's questioning that. Earlier, they kind of implied that Marie Battelle took the prosecution's position as kind of a way to hopefully help Una out, but she was the arresting officer when they brought her in.
Seems like a conflict of interest to have the arresting officer also be your prosecutor, doesn't it?
I would think so, yeah. Hang on one second. Sorry, everybody. Commander Dog is being a little difficult this evening. Not a big fan of courtroom dramas. She prefers the episodes where they fly around shooting stuff.
Well, don't we all at some point?
Yeah. So he's questioning getting Cthulhu involved in Una's defense, and he sought counsel with Admiral April in his quarters. Pike revealed that approaching Cthulhu had been his idea, and when he went on to share Una's remarkable accomplishments, including her swift promotions and a recommendation for the Starfleet Medal of Gallantry, April, with a knowing look, hinted at what could have been, suggesting that the court never had the opportunity to hear Una's outstanding record. Back in her cell, Una couldn't contain her frustration and confronted Cthulhu about her courtroom tactics. Cthulhu's response left Una with a bitter realization. Cthulhu hadn't taken on the case to help an old friend. Instead, it appeared to be at a platform to challenge the genetic modification law and to vent her anti-Federation sentiments. Una, still seeking answers about their past disagreement, was met with silence from Cthulhu. Cthulhu's parting words left Una with a sense of resignation as she returned to her work. And, even early in this episode, they basically said that she was taking this because of her anti-Federation feelings. That's not like some big secret. Right. I guess maybe Una had nothing to do with that part of the conversation, but it was no big secret.
Yeah, maybe it was more of a personal shock.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe she really did think it was just because they were old friends, and even though she wouldn't take she being Cthulhu wouldn't take her being Una's phone calls, maybe she thought that the friendship came through anyways, even though Captain Pike had to almost die of aspiration to to get her to get on board.
Friends forever.
Yeah. In the corridors of the USS Enterprise, the drama of the courtroom continued to unfold, leaving both the crew and Una herself with more questions than answers. Act 3.
I'd just like to point out before we get into Act 3, it seems ChatGPT has completely given up on giving us any more laughable Star Trek puns.
It does seem that way. Like, there's been a few references, but all the humor has been taken out, huh?
Yeah, just a little bit. It wasn't anything like what at the beginning.
That's interesting.
That first one got me. I'm still thinking about a Tribble getting dipped in a cup of coffee.
I had to stop for a second there. Oh, man. I mean, yeah, Tribbles don't really look dippable, do they? Yeah, I think as of right now, I'm going to call at least the humor aspect of this ChatGPT experiment a failure.
I mean, I'm a bit of a sucker for the cheesy puns myself, so I'm going to give it a bit of a generous 7 out of 10.
Okay.
I think they could have dug a little bit deeper and got a couple more obscure references in there, but I'm pretty happy with how some of those turned out.
Yeah, I was just shocked by the sudden lack of reference or lack of humor in part 2 after the first one,
Yeah, a little bit of a change of tone, but hey, it's ChatGPT.
Yep. All right. Let's check out Act 3. In the midst of this legal drama, Counselor Cthulhu... Okay, that actually kind of made me laugh a little bit. In the midst of this legal drama, Counselor Cthulhu pulled out all the stops and summoned La'an, Spock, and Mbinga as character witnesses for Una's defense. Their testimonies were like a 3-act play in the courtroom. First up was La'an, who had vividly recounted the tale of Una's rescue from a Gorn breeding planet. Now, it was actually La'an's rescue by Una from a Gorn breeding planet, but cum saw, I guess.
Yeah, potato.
Yeah, it was a tale that sounded like something out of a Starfleet adventure holo novel. But Batel, ever the prosecutor, couldn't resist raising an eyebrow at La'an's lineage, a descendant of none other than Khan Noonien-Singh. She probed La'an, asking if she ever knew Una was an Illyrian, to which La'an shook her head. Batel then inquired if La'an ever suspected that Una was hiding something, and once again La'an firmly denied any inkling. Mbinga's turn on the witness stand was brief but impactful. He spoke of Una's discretion and empathy, highlighting her remarkable ability to handle matters with great care. Next was Spock's turn, and it was Spock being Spock, logical and calm. but he couldn't help but inject a touch of humor into his testimony. He admitted to having a hunch that Una was concealing something, and that something turned out to be her inexplicable affinity for Gilbert and Sullivan musicals. Leave it to Spock to point out the illogic in the midst of a legal battle. Now, that was from one of the short treks from right after Discovery Season 2. They had an episode where they were stuck in a turbo lift together.
This might come as a surprise, but I actually have never watched the short treks yet. I've only ever heard good things, but I've just never sat down and taken the time to watch through them.
I really think those short treks that use the cast and crew from the Enterprise before this show was announced or worked on, before Strange New Worlds, I think that's where their real proof of concept that Strange New Worlds would work was. Because they just did these short little character pieces where, those two were stuck in a turbo lift together, or Pike showed up to walk somebody else through, what was about to happen on their first command. And I think that was the one where they really did hey, we got something here. We just need to figure out how we can do it.
Well, I'd say that they seem to figure it out quite well.
Oh, I 100% agree.
Although, I'll take more short treks if it means we get more Star Trek in general.
Well, yeah, it's, that was kind of the thing at that time, too. I think they were just looking for content they could put together inexpensively and quickly, still in the Star Trek universe. But, like I said, they did pieces with this crew, even though they weren't technically, on a show or anything yet. And I still think that was really the proof of concept. Gosh darn it, dog. What are you doing now?
Commander's wily tonight.
Yeah, she's really feeling her Wheaties. Space Wheaties. La'an returned to the spotlight, emphasizing the profound impact Una had on her life. Una had not only ensured her well-being when she had no family left, but had also wait. Did I just read that? What is this? Una had not only ensured her well-being when she had no family left, but had also sponsored her application to Starfleet. No commas, huh? Batel asked the pivotal question, would La'an even be in Starfleet if not for Una? La'an's response was a resounding no. She owed her life and countless lives that she had saved in her service to Una's sponsorship. Then came the philosophical twist. Spock, the Vulcan of unshakable logic, agreed that it would indeed be logical to apply punishment for breaking a law. However, he argued that it would be illogical for Starfleet to punish itself by losing an extraordinary officer like Una, whose loss would be a severe blow to the service. Mbenga chimed in, highlighting Una's selflessness in putting the lives of the crew before her own. Spock didn't just stop at calling her a colleague, he proudly declared her a friend, and La'an went one step further, referring to Una as family. Did you have something to say, Commander? No? Okay. Back aboard the Enterprise, La'an, the Chief of Security, took the opportunity to provide K'Tul with a copy of the Uniform Code of Justice. But as she prepared to leave, K'Tul didn't let her off the hook that easily. She probed La'an about her inquiry into how the prosecution had discovered Una's secret. La'an, a bit flustered, admitted that she hadn't made much progress, leading K'Tul to speculate that perhaps La'an herself had inadvertently revealed the secret. La'an recalling... What? You keep interjecting, but you don't want to say anything when I give you a moment to say something. Hey, what do you want to say? What would you like to say? Okay. La'an, a bit flustered, admitted that she hadn't made much progress yet, leading K'Tul to speculate that perhaps La'an herself had inadvertently revealed the secret. La'an, recalling her anger upon discovering Una's Illyrian heritage, confessed to recording a personal log on the matter, fearing that she might become dangerous due to her con lineage. K'Tul, in a moment of wisdom, assured La'an that there was no hidden monster inside her, and that it was merely the result of external prejudices. She emphasized that La'an's fears were not her own, but had been imposed upon her by others. La'an's genetic heritage didn't define her, and K'Tul's words seemed to provide a glimmer of hope to the worried security chief. As the trial resumed, K'Tul made a bold move, calling Una herself to the stand. Una's 25 years of service in Starfleet was laid bare for all to see. But K'Tul had one burning question. Why had Una, who knew she was Illyrian, chosen to join Starfleet? Una's response was poignant, invoking the Latin phrase ad astra per aspera, meaning to the stars through hardship. She explained that this motto represented her belief that the stars could deliver salvation, not just satisfy curiosity, and the need for exploration. It was a belief that Starfleet, despite its imperfections, could be a force for good. But then came the grilling from Pasalk, and he was relentless. He questioned the relevance of Una's childhood history, but K'Tul cleverly argued that the understanding... Man, I am having trouble reading this.
Yeah, they are... It is really getting choppy. I'm reading along with you here.
Yeah, it's like... you know what? I think as it goes on, it gets to be a worse writer.
Yeah, definitely a Algernon moment.
Yeah. Okay, so let me try this again. But then came the grilling from Pasalk, and he was relentless. He questioned the relevance of Una's childhood history, but K'Tul cleverly argued that understanding what it meant to be Illyrian was crucial if Una was being tried for being Illyrian. Una shared her painful childhood growing up in a divided society where persecution and civil unrest ran rampant. She recounted her own broken leg, a simple injury that became a life-threatening ordeal due to her parents' fear of discovery. As Pasalk pressed further, Una revealed the heart-wrenching story of her childhood friend Ivan K'Tul. Hey, look at that name. Who had been arrested at a tender age due to his Illyrian heritage. It was a story of fear, prejudice, and injustice, and it cast a dark shadow on the Federation's ideals. Una's tale left an indelible mark on the courtroom, serving as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by the Illyrian community. But the drama didn't end there. Pasalk turned his attention to Captain Pike, suggesting that if he had been aware of Una's fraud before her arrest and failed to notify Starfleet, it could be seen as conspiracy. Una's revelation that Pike had concealed her Illyrian heritage for 4 months sent shockwaves to the courtroom, leaving everyone to wonder about the consequences of this revelation. The courtroom battle raged on, each testimony unveiling layers of complexity in Una's case, leaving no one untouched by the emotional and ethical dilemmas at play. Now, I was trying to figure out how you could separate this, because Illyrian children are born, I assume, with their genetic modifications. They don't choose to have them done when they're children. And I was thinking, oh, it's ridiculous that that would be held against somebody. And then I started thinking about, well, black kids didn't get a choice either when they were born. Native American children didn't get a choice either when they were born. So I had to let go of the argument thread that I was trying to construct in my head as I was watching this.
Right. This episode definitely pokes quite a few not so subtle, call it, indictments of, I think, American societies today.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can... the arguments are being made that you can compare to racial or sexual orientation, or, I mean, whatever you want to compare it to, it's in there. Act 4, Pasalk, ever the buzzkill, waves away the defense's emotional roller coaster as if he's swatting at bothersome space mosquitoes. He insists that it's the law that should...
Okay, they're trying again.
They're back, yeah. That it should take center stage, not all this touchy-feely stuff. Una's secret Illyrian status is out in the open, and it seems her little charade might also land Pike, Starfleet's golden boy, in some hot legal soup.
Okay, we're back.
Yep, okay, it's trying. It's trying. Pasalk labels Una as toxic in every possible way, as if she's some kind of rogue cleaning agent. So naturally, he concludes that it's the height of Vulcan logic to slap a guilty verdict on her. Now picture this. K'Tul, armed with her trusty uniform code of justice prop, takes center stage like a legal Jedi with a forceful presence. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay. So ChatGPT, I gotta pull back on what I was saying about you earlier. She casually quizzes Battelle about Starfleet Code 8514 as if it's a pop quiz in the School of Interstellar Law. Surprise, surprise, Battelle knows her code numbers, So Cthulhu flips open her copy of the code like she's reading the day's specials at a cosmic diner. And what's code 8514 all about? It's Starfleet's way of saying, hey, if you're fleeing persecution because your DNA's a bit wonky, come on down and we'll give you refuge. It's like the VIP pass to a galactic... It's... Okay. It's like the VIP pass to a galactic sanctuary club. Starfleet captains are the bouncers, and they get to decide who's cool enough to enter. Una, being the clever Illyrian that she is, decided to seek asylum from the hardships of being born with unique genes. She believes Starfleet was her ultimate superhero, the only force capable of saving her from the genetic villains. Man, okay.
The villains? What?
I don't know.
Where did that come from?
It kind of fell apart there at the end. Let's see here. Una checks off all the asylum requirements like items on a shopping list. She's got the special Illyrian DNA, and she spills the beans to Captain Pike, who plays part of the humanitarian superhero by granting her asylum. All that's left is for the tribunal to give their thumbs up and clear Una's name. Cthulhu, in a burst of legal fervor, declares her undying love for the law, comparing it to a cosmic beacon that reminds folks of their better, less rule-breaking selves. She even agrees with Mr. Buzzkill Pasalk, saying that, hey, Code 8514 is also law, so let's embrace it like a long-lost space sibling. She urges the tribunal to challenge... Oh, man, I got to take a breath here. I'm reading too fast. She urges the tribunal to channel their inner Starfleet ideals and apply the asylum law with the same passion they use to enforce the no running in the corridors rule. It's like a pep talk from a legal coach. Years ago, Starfleet's ideals picked up a young girl from the cosmic boondocks and said, you're part of the club now. Find those ideals within yourselves, tribunal, and let Una crash on the cosmic couch. Okay.
Oh my god.
Next up is Admiral Javis speaking on behalf of the tribunal. She starts by saying that sure, genetic engineering is a bit like juggling antimatter. It's complicated. The laws against it exist for good reasons, like preventing another oops, we created superhumans crisis. But, and here's the twist, she says that not every augmented Illyrian or DNA tweaked person should be treated like a cosmic pariah. Lines must be drawn, and they must also be squiggly and flexible, like an alien pasta dish. She adds with a wink. She predicts that one day Starfleet and the Federation will change their views faster than you can say warp speed, but for now, they're just here to weigh Una's case. The tribunal nods along, convinced that Una's asylum request deserves a yes, like it's the most logical answer in the universe. Case closed. Una's charges are as cleared as a warp field after a jump. In the transporter room aboard the Enterprise, it's like the hottest party in the galaxy. Pike, Batel, Cthulhu, and the senior staff are waiting for Una to beam aboard, ready to throw confetti and break out space champagne. Una has a mischievous grin, half-jokingly accuses Cthulhu of being the galaxy's greatest detective for uncovering her secret plot. Cthulhu, the mastermind herself, slyly responds that she didn't uncover everything. Una, overwhelmed by gratitude, thanks Cthulhu for being her legal guardian angel, and tosses an apology for not doing more for Illyrians, as if she should have started a cosmic bake sale. But Cthulhu, being an eternal optimist, sees it as a promising start, like the first day of space school. As Cthulhu bids farewell in the name of friendship, the crew breaks into applause, as if they've just witnessed the greatest interstellar comedy show. Cthulhu takes a final bow, pointing out that she wasn't exactly Starfleet's biggest cheerleader, but she's leaving with a newfound respect for this crew that proudly serves under an Illyrian commander. A humble start indeed. As the applause dies down, Pike and Una share a hug that's more heartwarming than a supernova in a cold universe. It's a hug so full of emotion that even the stoic Vulcan Spock might shed a single tear of joy in the background. La'an, always ready with a quip, welcomes Una back with open arms, saying the ship just wasn't the same without her. Una looks around at the assembled crew and wonders aloud who's been steering the ship with everyone gathered here. Ortegas, the ship's resident comedian, quips the ship practically flew itself, and Una, in her infinite wisdom, orders everybody back to their stations. And just like that, the cosmic party's over, and it's back to business as usual, as the transporter room empties. Pike and Una share another heartfelt hug. I don't remember 2 hugs.
I remember the second one, but it seemed like it was a bit more of a awkward thing.
Yeah.
Like Pike just kind of did it on emotion and then straightened himself out.
Yeah, that's the way I remember it. And Una share another heartfelt hug, both relieved to be back together as if they've just discovered that warp drive can run a friendship. Now, doesn't that make the whole legal drama a bit more entertaining?
Okay, Bugs Bunny GPT.
Well, okay, so let's cover the episode first. What did you think of this episode on a scale of warps 1 through 10, knowing that warp 10 doesn't actually exist?
So, knowing that warp 10 doesn't actually exist, I would have to give this one a emotional 9.7.
Oh, that's pretty high.
But if I'm taking the episode as it is, a couple of points off of there, but we had mentioned last week, the differences in opinion, me being a Star Trek fan as of 2006, and yourself being able to stick around for, the original series being relatively new, not maybe like compared to me in the Next Generation now, being able to see the Next Generation and all those movies and all those shows come out live. Mm-hmm. This one for me was the first time I had gotten to see a Star Trek legal drama one of the society episodes. One of the ones where they try and get you to watch to really take a hard look and actually see it new and see the parallels in what's going on in the world today and what's happening in the news and what's happening in places all over the country. And it was kind of a bit of a ride for me because I'm used to going back to these types of episodes and going, I mean, this is an entertaining episode, but I'm, at minimum 20, 30 years removed from the point, Yeah.
Like
say you would have when it come out on a Friday or Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly. So after season 2, I pretty much watched Next Generation as it was released. Obviously, it was canceled. The original series was canceled 4 years before I was born, but it showed 2-3 times a day on TV when I was a kid. And for me, those were all new episodes. And honestly, even though in my head, it seems like the early to mid 70s and the late 60s are a million years apart, they're not. They're just a handful of years apart. Yeah. So the world was very much the same, So yeah, I get what you're saying there as far as like when you watch an episode of, say, the original series, it was from 40 years before you were born. Whereas for me, it was 4, or what, 30 years for you, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, I could see that where, hang on, dog. I can see that where this is the first one that really kind of held up a mirror to your time. Kind of said like,
go ahead. Did I lose you there?
No. I was starting to say something, but so were you, so I stopped talking.
My bad. But what I was going to say is I actually have a couple of friends that, I'm not going to go put their business out on the internet, but these issues that we have today affect them quite personally. And I went up to him and said, I know you're not Star Trek people, but why don't you do me a favor and give this episode a watch for me if you can find it. Tell me what you think about it. And they did. As far as I know, they still haven't managed to finish the whole episode. But when I had just talked to them recently, because we were going to record this, it's Sunday today, we were going to do it on Thursday.
Yeah.
And I had reached out that day to talk to them about it. And they said, we haven't gotten through 15, 20 minutes of it, but gay rights.
Yeah.
It's 100% talking about gay rights. And I was like, well, that's what I was thinking too.
Like I said,
kind of the big one right now in the news.
It is, but it's also talking about, just racial differences.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
talking about everything for sure.
Yeah.
But that was what had definitely stood out in their mind. So it definitely is something that I feel a lot of people should give it a watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Even if you're not a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, there's So I watch a lot of really bad movies, like really cheap bad movies. There's one called Ben and Arthur from the early 2000s, and it's from a time when gay marriage was only legal in Vermont and Hawaii. And this thing is, I mean, Henry, they shot this thing on about a $12 budget. The guy who is like the lead character wrote, produced, directed, and starred in it.
If you have a DVD copy of this, I would love it. I actually collect movies like that.
I'll have to see if I've got something hanging around. So I know I've got a digital copy somewhere still. So there's this whole thing about these two characters trying to get married, right? And they're gonna either have to go to Hawaii or Vermont. And it's so weird. And this all happened within my lifetime. You know, I've got gay friends. I've got married gay friends. And to think that there was a time these friends of mine couldn't have got married. And then to realize that it wasn't that long ago. And it was recent enough that this bad movie that was only made 15, 18 years ago is still from the time where that was illegal. Yeah, this thing is like The Room, but cheaper and gay. It's just an incredible, incredible movie.
Oh, man. I'm going to have to give it a watch. Like I said, there's nothing been a good $5 movie. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love these ones that you just kind of accidentally hear about somewhere. You're like, well, no way, this thing could be as bad as they're saying. And then you go check it out and go, oh, oh my goodness. Oh, man. Next time you and I are over in the same neck of the woods, remind me to break out the binder and let you have a good browse through. Anything you pick in there is going to blow your mind, I promise you.
Okay. Well, so back to this episode, I would give it a solid 8, a very solid 8, well written, well directed, well characterized. I wouldn't give it any negatives. Now, the lady who played Cthulhu, she must play lawyers in other shows because every time she was on the screen, I was going, I've seen her before. And because I didn't write the show notes this week, I didn't go look her up. But I was so distracted by her in this role going, God, she's got to be a TV lawyer on something else, that it took me out of the show. That is the only reason I give it any negatives. And it's not because she did a bad performance. It was just, she was so good in her role, it kept taking me out of it.
You know, I gotta get that same vibe when I watched through it, especially on the rewatch. Like, hey, I've seen this actor before. I've seen this character before somewhere. Like, I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, there was just something about her that was so fitting for that role that it made me wonder. And I probably should have stopped and went and looked it up just so I didn't do this to myself during this period. But I was just wondering where she was from, because it has to be a legal drama, or she is just able to jump into any role and play it convincingly to that degree.
That's an actor that's gone places for sure.
Yeah. And then let's give ChatGPT, let's give it some points. How do you think it did on a scale of 1 to 10 coffee dunk tribbles?
Coffee dunk tribbles. I'm still thinking about that. A tribble wired up on caffeine. I could watch a whole 3 seasons of that, man. But for the humor, I give it an absolute 10 out of 10 when it comes in, because cheesy humor is my thing, and there was more than a couple of times where I'm really glad I wasn't holding a drink, because I would have spat it out all over my shirt. But that being said, I am absolutely purging the computer buffer after this.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Well, there was one thing I wanted to hit real quick. Now, before you and I talked about you coming on as my co-host, I had gotten an email from somebody saying, hey, I noticed that you guys haven't put out a new episode in a while. I'm kind of hoping that we'll see something, here soon. And I think you and I probably talked within a few weeks after that when I asked you to come on as my co-host, or at least try it out. But this fella here, he's from a podcast called For Your Ears Only, where they are reviewing every James Bond movie. But he recently sent me an email after last week's episode. If I can find it here. So Colton Flat's his name. He writes and says, listen to the new episode. I think your cousin brings a lot of fun facts, tidbits, and references to the table and made the episode really enjoyable. So you have already gotten some positive, I've already gotten some positive feedback from being on the show.
Yeah, my first bit of fan mail. Yeah. Thank you so much.
So that's always nice to see positives like that because, I used to host a podcast with a former wrestler, Bobby Blaze. And at the end of the show, like I do here, we'd say, hey, if you, wherever you listen to us, go leave us a star rating and a review. And please keep in mind that Bobby and Jeremy suck is not a review. Because occasionally we'd get those, and I'd always like to just, remind people that's not actually a review. That's just an opinion and leave our personal lives out of it. But anyhow, one of the things I forgot to do last week, and I need to make sure I do every week, I want to thank Miguel Esparza from the band Hatriot for our theme music, and my good friend Will Harding for handling our YouTube page. And Henry, thank you for coming on as the co-host.
Thank you for having me as always, brother.
Yep. And thank you everybody for listening. Please, like I started to say a moment ago, take a moment, rate, review, share, like, subscribe, all that stuff. We're on all of the outlets for podcasts. We are on YouTube where we release full episodes plus snippets. So please take a moment to do that. Henry, you want to close out the episode this week?
Well, nothing but a small advertisement. If anybody has any need for any used isolinear chips, feel free to drop us an email. They have only had ChatGPT installed on them once.
And with that, we bid you all farewell. Live long and prosper.
Good night, everybody.